Most people think they are not being heard because they are not explaining clearly enough. That is rarely the problem. In most cases, they are explaining too much. Over-explaining does not increase understanding. It increases resistance, because the more you explain, the more you shift the focus away from your boundary and onto your reasoning, and reasoning invites evaluation. When you explain yourself, you unintentionally give the other person a role. You make them the judge of whether your boundary is valid. You place your clarity on trial. This is why people interrupt you while you're explaining, why they counter your points, why they propose compromises you didn't ask for. They are no longer listening to what you decided. They are listening for something to push back on. Being heard does not come from saying more. It comes from saying less and meaning it. The people who are consistently respected are not the ones with the best arguments. They are the ones whose statements sound settled, final, non-negotiable. They don't rush to justify themselves. They don't fill silence with reassurance. They don't try to manage how the other person feels about their decision. They state the boundary and stop talking. This is uncomfortable for many people, especially those who learned that being liked required being agreeable, or that being understood required being accommodating. Over-explaining is often a self-protection strategy. It's an attempt to soften the impact of your boundary so no one feels disappointed, rejected, or upset. But that softening is exactly what causes the boundary to fail. Because boundaries are not emotional negotiations, they are informational. They tell someone what access they have and what they don't. When you explain your boundary, you dilute the information. You turn something factual into something emotional, and emotions are easier to override. This is where the pattern starts. You say no, then you explain why, then they respond to your explanation instead of your no. They reassure you, they question you, they downplay your concern, and suddenly you're defending a decision you already made. At that point, you are no longer being heard, you are being engaged. There is a difference. Being heard means your statement stands on its own. Being engaged means your statement becomes part of a conversation you didn't consent to. If you want to be heard, your boundary must sound like it doesn't need feedback. Not angry, not cold, just complete. A boundary that works does not sound persuasive. It does not sound like you are hoping for agreement. It sounds like you already decided and moved on. This is why repetition is more effective than explanation. When someone pushes back, repeating the same sentence calmly does more than adding new information. It signals stability. It communicates that the boundary is not evolving, that there is nothing to clarify, nothing to fix, nothing to negotiate. Most people abandon boundaries too early, not because they changed their mind, but because they feel pressure to keep talking. Silence makes them uncomfortable, so they fill it. They add context, they add backstory, they add emotional cushioning, and each addition weakens the original statement. Being heard requires restraint. It requires letting the other person sit with your decision without helping them process it. That is not cruelty. That is emotional neutrality. You are not responsible for making your boundary feel good to someone else. You are responsible for enforcing it. When you stop over-explaining, something shifts. People may not like your boundary, but they stop challenging it because it no longer sounds provisional. It no longer sounds like it's waiting to be revised. It sounds complete. This is what quiet authority looks like. Not louder, not more detailed, not more convincing, just settled.